It feels like the filmmaker Judd Apatow has kept everything. A letter he wrote to Steve Martin at 12 years old that became strangely threatening. Autographs he got from people like Al Pacino, Andy Kaufman, Barbra Streisand. There's a couple of the examples you get when you see Judd Apatow's memoir, Comedy Nerd, A Lifelong Obsession in Stories and Pictures. And I'm glad he's here to talk about it now. Judd, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm very happy to be here.
Nice to have you. And you're here to talk about the book. You're here because you have the Godspell documentary, which we're going to talk about later. Mm-hmm. But I just love this, that you are also here just as like a proud dad. Because your daughter has her first directorial film at TIFF. How's that feeling for you?
Great. It's today at 5:30, and I'm excited. It's a great movie. It's really funny and very sweet. She did a beautiful job, and to see it with 1,000 people here in Toronto is going to be amazing.
How's it feeling for you, though, that your daughter's getting into the business? I mean, I know she's been an actor for a while, and they're both you've had them in the business. They really had zero choice. Yes. But how are you feeling that? How are you feeling that she's getting into the directorial side? I mean, that's you not that long ago. That's her now saying, "Don't talk about me."
Why does she want to talk to me? She's like, "Dad, what are you going to wear to the premiere?" I'm excited for it. I mean, there are definitely moments when you realize that you didn't talk about anything but storytelling and movies and TV at the dinner table, and you gave them no ability to go into medicine or law because you're so dumb yourself that you have no other interests. So there are moments where I think, I guess I could have talked like politics with her, but I like being creative. I think it's a nice life if you're passionate about it and you have things to say, and it's exciting to see her reveal her voice as a director. And I think she's really an interesting voice.
I'm excited to see it too. You are very sentimental. I got that from this book.
Yes.
I mean, it's very sweet, to be honest. You kind of kept absolutely everything.
I know. I always say it's not hoarding if all your shit is awesome. And I looked back at all my stuff, which I had kept since I was like 8 or 9 years old. I mean, there's a picture in the book of my closet when I was a kid. Yeah. And you see all my books of autographs and signed baseball bats from the New York Mets. And they were like wrapped in towels. Like, I thought they were so important. My Phil Collins autograph poster. And I never stopped collecting and taking care of all the items, my whole life. And I didn't know why I was doing it. So when I decided to put the book together, which is a little bit inspired by the old Saturday Night Live scrapbook, and there was a book called the Marx Brothers Scrapbook. Yeah. I thought, this is why I saved all this stuff. And so we just started taking pictures of it and scanning it. And I spent about 2 years assembling all these photos and memorabilia. And then I took 6 months to write essays, so that as you go through the book, it's like I'm over your shoulder explaining what things are. And it was really, really fun. And yes, I get very nostalgic.
It's very clear that you were, speaking of the Marx Brothers, you were really obsessive about comedy from a really young age. Like, give us, what are your earliest memories about being sort of an obsessive about comedy? Not just a fan of it, but an obsessive around it.
I think it started because in New York, they would always play Abbott and Costello and the Marx Brothers every weekend. So you would watch all your cartoons, and then you would land on the Marx Brothers and Abbott and Costello. Yeah. And then my grandmother was friends with this comedian named Toady Fields. Yeah. And she was like a Joan Rivers type comedian, very self-deprecating. And we would go see her, and she would just rip the house down. And I think on some level, I just thought, that seems pretty amazing. And I think I felt weird. And she was kind of, like an odd lady who was so confident. And it must have connected like, that's the thing to do. You want to be a person like that. They're different, but the audience really likes them, and they're speaking their truth, and they're getting big laughs.
If you're going to be weird anyway, you might as well find a way to make something of it,
Exactly. Yeah. Joe, you don't have to just hate yourself and be insecure. Maybe you can turn it into your superpower, being a weirdo.
There's a David Lee Roth line that I really love. That's I'm not like this because I'm in Van Halen. I'm in Van Halen because I'm like this.
Exactly. All I do, by the way, is watch clips of David Lee Roth performing now, and I still can't get enough of him.
He's incredible, and I love that you had this Marx Brothers obsession. Even though you dressed up as Harpo when you for Halloween. I've been going back and listening to all the old You Bet Your Life radio shows right now. Like they're all on Spotify right now, and going back and listening to Groucho. What do you remember loving about the Marx Brothers? Because it's a very specific style of comedy.
I must have liked just the anarchy of it.
Yeah.
I mean, someone told me once that in a Marx Brothers movie, they would always have a rich guy in a tuxedo punch Harpo in the face in the first 5 minutes. And then after that, they're allowed to do anything. So when we were doing Superbad, I remember there's a scene where a high school kid spits in Jonah's face in the first 5 minutes. And that was our Harpo.
Did you hear him having a big grad party next Saturday?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
You're not coming. Tell your fucking faggot friend he can't come either.
So Jesse wanted me to tell you that you're a fucking faggot and you can't come to his party.
No, you really bitched out back there, man.
I bitched out? You bitched out, man. Fucking Judas.
Like, oh, anything Jonah does the rest of the movie is okay because he gets treated badly.
He got disrespected early on.
Exactly. And I must have liked that and just the idea of them attacking power. You know, they were always going hard against socialites.
Your mom ends up working at a comedy club after your parents split up, and you start going to the comedy club, and you talk a little bit about some of the sets that, you know, inspired you and some of the comedians that inspired you. Can you give us an example of a set you saw that sort of broke your brain and made you go, okay, well, this is something I can do or something I'd like to do?
Well, the funny thing that happened was I think the first show I saw when my mom was a hostess at the East End Comedy Club on Long Island was Paul Provenza, who hosted the Green Room show on Showtime.
Yeah, I watched that, yeah.
And he's an amazing comedian. And I just remember watching it as a kid, and he was doing some bit about E.T., and he went like outside and in the middle of his act in a very Robin Williams way and grabbed a giant umbrella and started setting up like the satellite dish E.T. created in the movie on stage. And it was this big improvisation. I remember the crowd going crazy for it. I don't know if he ever did it other than that one time. And as I was working on this, someone had a photo of that exact moment.
Oh, wow.
And that's in the book. Like I literally found a photo of the first show I ever saw.
And you're there somewhere in the audience.
And I'm in the back of the room. You don't see me, but I saw it. And so that summer, Jay Leno was there and J.J. Wall and all these comedians, and I would get all their autographs. And then at some point I thought, I could interview these people for my high school radio station. Because it became about how can I get closer to them?
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm watching it. Would they ever talk to me? And then I started interviewing them in a situation similar to this. And I was basically just saying, how do you do it for myself? I didn't even air most of the interviews. I just wanted to know, how do you write a joke? How do you get on stage? Who do you ask to get on stage?
So like you were interviewing people, Jerry Seinfeld before he was a big star, John Candy, like over 50 comedians. I think the first time you and I talked was for the book you made of that. Did you get any advice from them that you still use? Like, can you think of a piece of advice you got from a comedian that's still in there?
When I look back, a couple of the pieces of advice must have really landed. One was that Harold Ramis, who is the great writer of Ghostbusters and did all that great work with Bill Murray, and he directed Groundhog Day. He just talked about writing jokes for other people. So when he was young, he wrote jokes for Playboy magazine and he wrote jokes for Rodney Dangerfield. And it was the first time I realized, I can try to be a comedian and at the same time pay my rent by writing for other people, which most comedians didn't want to do because they were so obsessed with their own career. Yeah. But I thought, that makes sense. And so when I first started out, I'd write jokes for Jeff Dunham for his Walter puppet, or I wrote jokes
Jeff
for...
Dunham was going on, he was around back then?
Oh yeah, George Wallace I wrote jokes for. And so I had a dual career of doing stand-up and then also being available to write for other people. And then I started writing for Tom and Roseanne. And that's how I supported myself while I was a bad comedian. So I was writing jokes while trying to figure out who I was.
But that's after you go to film school, right? Like that's after you, because you're doing stand up a little bit, and then you're obsessed with stand up, and then you go to film school because you're like, hey, I can't do stand up as a academic thing. Yes. But film school maybe be the closest thing to it.
Yeah, it's the closest major. Screenwriting seemed to be the closest major to stand up comedy.
There are a couple of moments where I'm surprised you didn't give up, and not because you're not great. you're obviously very good. But like there were moments where like I'm always really interested in when there are moments that other people would stop. Mm-hmm. And you have a couple of them. And one of them is when you get a really, really good roommate. And what I mean by that is that like I've had people who are like in bands and then they are in a band with you even make this analogy in the book that imagine if you were in a band and your roommate was Bono.
Yeah.
And you still had to be in a band, but your roommate Bono's band is doing really well. Your roommate is Adam Sandler. And he is you talk about him like, I mean, you tell me, like he was great then, like he was incredible then, right?
Well, it's similar to that moment in Don't Look Back when Bob Dylan is in the hotel room with Donovan, and Donovan plays a song.
I'll write a song for you. That's what I came here to do. Yeah.
And then Dylan's like, I'll play a song, and then he plays like,
It's all right. It's all over now, baby blue.
Yeah. And Donovan has this look in his eyes like, oh Jesus, should I quit? And
it's the earliest rap battle, by the way.
Exactly. That's kind of what it felt like with a bunch of people, not just Adam, with Jim Carrey. There were just people floating around, and I always had a sense, oh, these aren't just comedians; these are the greatest comedians of all time. And this is before they took off. But I had a sense of, oh, there's a destiny to these people. They really are at another level. But yet I still had to work on my act. And they were both very supportive of me, both asking me to write for them and supportive in my stand-up, which was never in the universe of what they were doing.
Did those great stand-ups like back then, like Norm Macdonald, he was around then, Jim Carrey, Adam Sandler, I don't know who else was around back then, but like when
David Spade and Rob Schneider, Drake Sather.
Did they have something in common?
There was
looking back.
Well, looking back, there was something that, on some level, I see a little less of today, which was a real sense of it's possible for me to really reach the heights of this career. There was a youthful madness, like a confidence in it's possible I could be the next Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, I could be gigantic.
Yeah, I mean, Adam Sandler would write screenplays for himself before anyone knew who he was. And no one was doing things like that. He would just like write a screenplay for him to be the star of while he still couldn't get work. And so there was a sense of destiny to some of them. And they worked with that idea, like it's possible for me to be Bill Murray or Rodney Dangerfield. But
none of these, having Jim and Adam around you, made you want to stop, made you think like, hey, I'm never going to be as good as those guys. I might as well give it up? No, because I thought, I'm not sure exactly what I'll do in this business. I clearly should be here somewhere. Yeah. And they would ask me to write for them, and sometimes I would write something for them, and it would really work. So I remember Jim Carrey said to me, I'm going to do this tribute to Steven Spielberg, and I'm not supposed to speak, but I would like to have something ready just if for some reason it seems like they're going to want me to speak. Yeah. Like he didn't know how the format of the AFI thing worked. Yeah. So we worked together on this speech, and he liked the speech so much he asked them if he could say it. And then it was truly an epic, like amazing moment of him doing, 7 minutes of Spielberg jokes to Steven Spielberg in front of all of Hollywood. Yeah. And he just burned the place down. It was amazing. So sometimes I would think, oh, maybe I have talent because I worked with Jim on that and it did that well. So there's a path for me here somewhere. And also Jim's belief in me made me think I could do things. You end up working with Garry Shandling early on. And I mean, I have such a love of, I think the last time I saw you was in the hallway in TIFF a couple of years ago. And I just told you how much the Zen Diaries of Garry Shandling meant to me, like it changed my life. And for people who don't know, Garry Shandling was a comedian. He was a writer. He had a show called It's Garry Shandling Show, which was the first show that really broke the fourth wall, where he spoke directly to the audience, something a lot of people do now. He was also a very spiritual person, very interested in Buddhism, very interested in Zen. Ended up making the Larry Sanders Show, the best television show in history. And what I love about your early relationship is just how much you wanted to work, like how much you wanted to prove something to him. So the story is that like he's looking for someone to write him some jokes for the Grammys, and you stay up all night writing nearly 100 jokes. And he was only expecting like maybe 2 or 3 jokes. Well, probably 20 jokes. You wrote 100 jokes. So talk to us about that phone call with him the next morning. Well, I had wanted to write for him or work for him. I bumped into him with my manager, Jimmy Miller, and we were at the Comedy Magic Club, and Jimmy's like, you should let Judd write stuff for you. And Garry kind of didn't show any interest. And then a few months later, he needed jokes because he was hosting the Grammys. So I was in Texas at the Improv in Dallas, and I just stayed up all night. I really felt like, oh, this is the moment I have to come through. And you felt that, hey, you were like, hey, this could be a big moment for me. I must have, because I really worked hard. I just thought, okay, I need to be the person that he has no choice but to hire. And I just stayed up all night writing a zillion jokes. And then the next day we jumped on the phone and
I had faxed them to him, and we went over each one. And I think what happened was that he didn't know that much about modern music. So every one of my jokes explained a premise to him. And then one by one on the phone, he would come up with a better punchline than I had.
Do you remember any of them?
There had just been the Northridge earthquake.
Yeah. And
there was some joke about David Crosby eating 2 weeks of his earthquake supplies the first night. I always remember there was a joke. There was a guy in a band, like it was a country band, who had really big sideburns. And I had Garry say, "I've never seen anything like that before, and I'm a Trekkie." But basically, his jokes are 100 times better than my jokes, but I think he really appreciated that I understood the scene and what was happening. And then he asked me to go to New York with him and be there for the show and to be on stage during the show with other writers. And I mean, that was like the most exciting thing that ever happened, because also that year it was, I believe it was like the year Eric Clapton won for Tears in Heaven. And everybody was there. The funniest thing that happened was that at one of the Grammys, because we did it a couple of times, I said to Garry, you should ask REM to be on the Larry Sanders Show. And he's like, "I don't like walking up to people directly and asking them to be on." And I said, "Garry, you just hosted the Grammys, you killed. Just ask them. They're walking this way. Just ask them." And so the whole band is walking towards him. And Garry goes, "Hey, if you guys ever want to be on the Larry Sanders Show, we'd love to have you." And Michael Stipe just kind of looks away and just keeps walking. And then Garry goes, "Or I can go fuck myself." And he was so mad at me for making him ask.
But the guys in REM were kind of like, "Oh yeah, Michael kind of does that sometimes."
Yeah. Then they were like, "Sorry, he's always doing that." And he is the coolest guy ever, Michael Stipe. But it was the funniest moment. And I also forced Garry to take a picture with Springsteen and me. And Garry didn't want to take any pictures. He never wanted a fanboy. And I go, "Garry, we have to take a picture with Springsteen." And we have a really funny, stiff picture of me, him, and Springsteen in the book.
I promise I'm not just trying to bum you out all the time. I'm trying to build this case for what ended up happening to you. When you sort of had to give up on doing stand-up because that was the dream, was it sad? Like, were you sad to be like, okay, I'm going to write for other people, I'm going to produce, but like that dream of stand-up's not going to be what I hoped?
Well, I kept having these bumps along the way because I would get writing jobs, and so I could either do stand-up and make $50 or $100 here and there, or suddenly I was getting offered to work on a TV show, and that would take up all my time. And so when I created the Ben Stiller Show with Ben, a sketch show, suddenly I had no time because we were working like from 7 in the morning to 2 in the morning for about a year. Yeah. And I thought, I can't even pretend that I have time to do stand-up. And then when it was over, I went to work for the Larry Sanders Show. So I just thought, I have no time to go run to a club at night. And it doesn't seem like anyone really wants me to in a big way.
But it didn't bother you? It didn't,
It didn't. I was kind of burnt out on just my obsession with stand-up. So I really didn't pay much attention to stand-up for literally almost 20 years.
Like you wouldn't go to it?
I wouldn't go to the shows. I would go see like Chris Rock or somebody, but I went to very few shows. I didn't even know what was happening in the stand-up scene for a very long time. And then when I did Trainwreck, Amy kept doing stand-up and I would go with her. Yeah. And then one night I said, "I'm going to go on stage just to show you what it was like when I did it." And she was excited to watch me bomb. And then I had a kind of a good set. And then at the Comedy Cellar, they were like, "Hey, you can come in whenever you want." And then starting then, I started doing stand-up a few times a week, which I still do.
You're still doing it now?
Yeah.
So for people who don't know, so Judd mentioned the Ben Stiller Show. You met Ben Stiller at an Elvis Costello concert. 2 weeks later, you sell the show to HBO. It gets canceled after 13 episodes and then wins an Emmy for outstanding writing. You make Freaks and Geeks. It comes out in 1999. Time magazine says it's some of the greatest TV of the year. It gets canceled. Then you have a show like Undeclared that gets canceled the same day it was listed in Time Magazine's 10 best shows on television. We had Jay Baruchel not that long ago to talk a little bit about like what exactly happened and the episodes being aired out of order for Undeclared. These are very contradicting messages. My show is well loved and is the best thing on TV, and it happened 3 different times. What did you make of it at the time? And now looking back, what do you think happened?
And it also happened in movies with Heavyweights, our Disney movie that we did, and then with The Cable Guy. We just kept making things we liked that somehow weren't really doing what we wanted them to do. And it's funny because I was always such a fan of alternative music. So what I would do in my head is go, well, I guess what this is all like being in the Replacements.
Yeah.
This is like being in the Buzzcocks. You know, you're not selling as many tickets as the Oak Ridge Boys, but you got your little thing. We're like Elvis Costello. Yeah. And so I tried to wear it almost as a badge of pride that these things were cool and kind of cool enough to fail and get rejected, because I really was confident that I liked them. But I remember I was walking on the lot once with Ben Stiller around that time, and Ben would be so nice. Right as we were about to get canceled, on every show he would show up and do a cameo to try to help us survive. And it never worked. But he just said to me, "Man, you need a hit."
Thanks, man.
Because when you don't make people money, they just don't believe you know what you're doing, or you should be given budgets. And so the math becomes bad at a certain point. And then when a couple of things worked, me and Nick Stoller wrote Fun with Dick and Jane. Yeah. And then I produced Anchorman. Yeah. And suddenly the door started opening. But before then, it was a lot of getting cold cocked. Yeah. And getting really angry about it. Like I would get very upset with the executives and very emotional. I had a back surgery because from the stress on my discs, because I loved the shows so much, and I was having an emotional problem with getting canceled. It felt like my parents' divorce. It felt like this abandonment. Like, wait, we have this huge family, and you're going to make us all go home and never talk to each other ever again?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because your parents split up, and that was so hard on you. And then, like, all of a sudden, you can't ever have a family. You can't ever have a family.
Yeah, it was like your parents getting divorced every year.
Well, everyone's telling you your parents' relationship is Time magazine says your parents' relationship is the greatest they've ever seen. Yeah. I love the note from the network on Freaks and Geeks, which is like, I mean, I loved it because I felt like an outsider. Our producer Caitlin out there, like, she loved it because I think she felt like an outsider too. She's actually wearing a Replacements t-shirt right now. Yeah. And the note from NBC was they need more victories?
Yeah, they want more victories. And the whole premise of the show for Paul Feig, the creator, was it was about how you survive not winning through your friendships and your family. And looking back, the show is, there's some very dark episodes. I mean, and dark maybe in the deepest way to be dark. Like, there's an episode about Jason Segel's character, Nick, and he's trying out for a local band to be the drummer. And he's just not good. Yeah. And it's about
he has the dream. He thinks he idolizes Neil Peart. He wants to be the greatest. He thinks he is. He acts like he's the greatest drummer of all the time. Yeah. And he gets there and he just can't do it.
And he's not good. There was the opening sequence, which is one of the first things I directed, was he's playing like Limelight, and he's got his cans on, and we hear the band rush. We don't hear what he's playing, and it looks like he's crushing it. And then we switched where you only hear his drums, and he's terrible. But at the end of the episode, it is about the moment you realize, oh, my dream's not going to come true. Yeah. And that's dark. Yeah. And then it just ended, the episode. And I think that in a time before single camera television, this is all, before Breaking Bad and those types of shows, it felt like the exact opposite of what network TV wanted. They wanted everything to be kind of a soap opera and sexy and fun. But what Paul Feig wanted to do was the opposite of Dawson's Creek. That was his whole idea, was, what if you told the truth about high school?
The saddest scene for me is Martin Starr's character. Remember his name?
Bill Havlicek.
And I don't know why this is, like, I don't know why this, I'm almost like, I can almost get teary-eyed thinking of it, and it's not really that sad a scene, but it's like he's kind of a loser, and he's kind of an outsider, and he feels really outside. And I don't know, this is happening to me right now. Mm-hmm. He's on the couch watching TV, watching Garry Shandling, I think, eating a sandwich and drinking milk, and man, I'm feeling it right now. Yeah. And like, he has no joy in his life, and at that point, like, his house is all alone, he's so lonely, and he laughs hysterically at the television. Yeah. Right now, like, that got me in a way. That's
my whole childhood. And it's to the song I'm the One by The Who. Yeah. I always forget if it's I'm One or I'm the One. Yeah. And the lyric of the song is, every year is the same, I feel it again, I'm a loser, no chance to win. And then he starts laughing at Garry, which was my tribute to Garry, because that was my entire childhood, was sitting home alone, because my friends were usually athletes, and so they were busy playing football, and I would just go home and watch Merv Griffin and the Dinah Shore Show.
Yeah.
And I cry the second I watch that every time. But Martin is such a great actor.
Yeah.
My wife Leslie played a nurse in one of the episodes where Martin is allergic to peanuts and almost dies, and she had a scene with him, and she couldn't stop crying, just looking in his eyes before he said anything because he was so vulnerable.
That idea of like you and Paul Feig made this show about, it's darkness and it's sadness, and they wanted comedy and they wanted lightness and they wanted everyone to win. Let's just say The 40-Year-Old Virgin, for example. So this was your directorial debut. You say later in the book, I always think that people should look at comedies as dramas when they're writing. Using that movie as an example, can you explain that to me?
When comedies are bad, it's usually because there's a joke premise and everything is trying to serve a joke premise as opposed to an emotional story of some sort.
What do you mean?
It's like, what's the movie where they're dragging around the dead guy?
Weekend at Bernie's.
Weekend at Bernie's. Like, it's a joke premise, so you have to service that. But
that opened to TIFF, actually, my joke.
Not that it's not wonderful.
It's in the Criterion closet right now, yeah.
But when you don't pull that off, it's difficult. But, the 40-Year-Old Virgin, which was based just on a joke idea that Steve Carell had about a guy who tells sex stories, but clearly they're made up because he hasn't had sex, and his friends realize it and try to change that. But when we started writing, we thought, well, what if we take this very seriously? Like, what happened to him? And then it became about that, he's trying to meet someone just to lose his virginity, but instead he meets a woman who's got a kid, who actually has a grandkid, and he has to learn what relationships are, not just having sex.
Yeah.
And it is a bizarre type of midlife coming of age movie about shame, about feeling insecure, that I'm not lovable, and finding love and learning how to get over all of that. And I think that's why it holds up to people, because it is taking itself seriously in the sense that we care about the character and we care about the story. We're not just trying to make you laugh. We're actually trying to have a three-dimensional character and a deep story, about love. And I always tell the story about Shandling always used to call me and say, you got to show the sex, because his sex will be better than his friend's sex because he's in love.
Yeah.
And I kept saying, I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Like, I can't just show Steve and Catherine Keener have sex. Like, I literally couldn't figure it out. Like, well, what would you show?
But he was saying he needs to know that the sex that you have when you're in love is the best. It's so much better than the shallow sex his friends are having and bragging about. Yeah.
And in fact, I found, after he passed, I found his script, and he had it written on the back. Like, this story is about love, and you need to show the sex to get this. And I'm like, I just don't know how to do it without it being graphic. And then one day I mentioned it again to Steve. I'm like, God, Gary's leaving messages on my machine. Have you figured out how to show the sex? And Steve goes, maybe I just sing a song. And I said, yeah, something like, let the sun shine in from Hair. And then it just happened in a second. But that was all Garry.
He introduced you to, you talk a couple of times about how he introduced you to Buddhism, and then Harold Ramis sort of gives you secular Buddhism about being nice to people even if there's no God.
Yes. Existentialism.
And you have spirituality kind of coming up. And even towards the end of the book, you talk a little bit about this vision you had on ayahuasca where you saw Jesus, Jewish, and all this other stuff. But there is like a spirituality, I might just be overthinking this a little bit, but there is that sort of Zen-ish spirituality in a lot of these movies. Like, if you look at This Is 40, that's a movie about acceptance. Like, it's a movie about not striving and accepting where you are sort of in your life. Funny People is in some ways about the acceptance that you're going to die, and allowing that to happen, and sort of your relationship with striving and suffering when it comes to the fact that we are all going to die, even no matter how rich and successful you are. I love that movie, by the way.
Thank you.
How has that spirituality impacted your writing?
I guess so. It's funny because sometimes you notice it more years later. Oh, I was really struggling with something, because it's all in the movie. Some people say, oh, you write the movie to figure out why you're writing the movie. And at each of those times, I'm clearly trying to talk to myself. Like, I think that the movies are conversations I'm having about what is the point of this? What is the point of being in the world of entertainment, of comedy? What is it, about making people happy? Is it about relationships? Is it about growth? And I had, been around a lot of people who went off the reservation or melted down. People died because they're servicing their ego and they have very low self-esteem. And a lot of people are in it for the right reasons and the wrong reasons. And there's like a struggle there.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting to show, what happens when you think you're going to die, but then you don't. But it's very hard to keep the wisdom you learned when you thought you were going to die.
Right.
And that ultimately what he learns in Funny People is all that matters is his friendship with Seth.
Yeah.
And
so, that's you? Like that's something you were thinking about? Like that's you are trying to work that out through Adam Sandler's character?
I guess, because sometimes you think you're Seth, sometimes you think you're Adam's character. In a lot of ways, Adam's character was based on my mom, and her attitudes. And she before that had died of ovarian cancer, and I had watched her struggle with how she felt about life while being on this roller coaster of thinking she was going to survive and then not thinking she was going to survive. And I noticed she seemed way happier when she thought she wasn't going to survive, because she just dropped all of her neuroses and was kind of very present.
Yeah, if you can have a moment and go, this is not going to last forever. You think that's going to be scary, but it actually makes it more beautiful.
Yeah, it frees you up in a lot of ways.
These movies do. I mean, I was born in '87, so these are the perfect years for movies for me. Knocked Up, Superbad, Pineapple Express. This is 40, as I mentioned. You describe this time as a moment in the book. Could you feel it while you were in it? Did it feel special at the time?
It did. It certainly was, a train going downhill with no brakes, because we had written a lot of projects and we couldn't get any of them made. And suddenly when we had credibility, people were willing to make a lot of them. So for 5 or 6 years, we were very busy, but there was a big community of people like Seth and Evan and Nick Stoller and Rodney Rothman and
Jason Segel
and Jake Kazan and Feig. And so, we were all in it together and supporting each other and going to each other's table reads. And we were able to, pull off a lot of the projects, even though a ton were happening at the same time.
What ends up happening? I kind of needed some clarification on this. You talk about how the era has an ending. You say, my abandonment issues bubbled up, and it took me years and a lot of therapy to see all of this as a miracle and a gift that it happened at all. Like, what happened and what were you feeling?
Well, I think it's probably like a band. There's a time limit on groups of people working together.
So these people who you just mentioned, they all started to do different stuff without you, or started to do without one another, or
yeah. And I think that's what I did with other groups of people throughout my career. But one of the drivers for a lot of it was I really believed in everyone. I had a real sense that everyone had a lot to offer. So when the shows got canceled, I felt like, well, we should all keep working together, because clearly everyone's going to do great things. And if I'm in a position to help people get to that place, let's just do it. But also I was probably having an emotional, psychological problem, which is not wanting to let go and wanting to keep the family together. And that
back to what you were talking about before. Yeah, I get it.
And that gave a lot of energy to my fierceness to get projects going, to work hard to make them great, because I was trying to keep the gang together. And then at some point you have to go, well, everyone has other ideas. And, one thing that is, it's difficult to accept, which is some of the other things that they want to do would be better without me. Like, that's not the thing I'm interested in. And so I would have to, one by one, try to get comfortable, like, oh, I guess we're all just going to be friends and maybe we'll work together. And some of us do here and there. But it's like, a band, it's like the Beatles, like you go, oh, I'm so glad the Beatles existed, but I'm also so glad that All Things Must Pass exists.
Yeah.
But now I feel just so proud of everyone. I saw the studio and I was just blown away by what Seth and Evan had accomplished. And everyone keeps doing these things where I am in a different position of just a fan. Like, wow, look how far they're taking it. Look how amazing they're getting there. They're still getting better. It's incredible.
A fan now, but a mentor then. I mean, the foreword for the book was written by Lena Dunham, who talks so much about how much you helped her make Girls and has helped her throughout the creation of Girls, the origin of Girls. Garry Shandling took you on as sort of a mentor figure. He hires you on the Larry Sanders Show. He gets you to direct for the first time when you didn't think you could ever do it. What did Garry teach you about being a mentor now that you're considered a mentor to folks like Seth Rogen, to Lena Dunham? What did you learn about being a mentor?
Well, a lot of it is just allowing someone around your process. So for Garry, it was, if you work at the Larry Sanders Show, you're going to learn a lot. And you learn a lot just sitting in that room, watching him make decisions, watching all of the different writers do things. So the first thing is just access, for people. And then I think one of the things I learned from Garry is, it's all about going deep, being fearless in your self-exploration. And you have to be gentle with yourself, with creativity. You have to create situations where you feel supported. Yeah. Because it's difficult to dig the stuff up and try to turn it into art, but you have to have some very heavy conversations to go, what am I thinking about? And I remember James Brooks once, I was working at the show The Critic, and someone was pitching him an idea for an episode. It was a cartoon about a Roger Ebert type critic. And someone pitched him something, and it wasn't good. And I just watched James Brooks ask questions for about 10 minutes. What about this? Maybe it could be that. Maybe it could be this. Like he never said your idea is bad. He just tried to find any vein in it that would lead to something else. And I thought, oh, that's how you do it. Like he made the writer feel really good, and they just kicked it around, and then eventually they found some other thing off of it.
I just think it's nice that you do it at all. I mean, we both know people in this business who don't want to help anybody out ever, and who would go, that's a bad idea. Yeah. And get out of here. You've met those people. I just think it's lovely that, I don't even have a question. I think it's just lovely that, and it's rarer than maybe you think, that folks like Lena or Jason Segel or Seth Rogen or these kind of people, you felt like, hey, I want to mentor them at all. I don't just want to make a couple of bucks on them. I want to help them find their voice.
I think that's the only reason why I do it is for the collaboration. So the intention isn't success. The intention is creative success. But also, I think as a kid, you would see Saturday Night Live or Monty Python and dream of having your group. I wonder if I'll find my group. And so just being allowed to sit with Lena Dunham and Jenny Connor and kick around story ideas, to me, is the gift. I never think of that as a business. I think, wow, I got to sit and watch Lena think of all that stuff. So, that's like the fanboy in me, is I have to be good enough to get in the room to have that fun experience.
The finding the group, I was watching the Godspell documentary last night. Yeah. So for people who don't know, you executive produced this, I heard the full name of it here. You had to be there, how the Toronto Godspell ignited the comedy revolution, spread love in overalls, and created a community that changed the world in a Canadian kind of way. It's all about the Toronto production of Godspell in '72. So that was the show that launched the careers of Andrea Martin, Eugene Levy, Paul Schaefer, Martin Short, Gilda Radner, Victor Garber. And I was saying to Caitlin yesterday when we were talking about it, it is just, they just happened to, they found their group pretty early on.
Yeah, it's an amazing story because Godspell was on Broadway, and then they started doing some satellite productions. Yeah. So they decided to do it in Toronto. And Stephen Schwartz, who later on, did Wicked, came to Toronto, and they just did auditions. And they did read hundreds of people. And I think the brilliance of it is he picked the best people. Yeah. And so out of all these people who were floating around Canada, his instincts were so good that it became the foundation for a lot of the future of comedy. He found Gilda and Martin Short, and then later Dave Thomas was in it, and all these people. And that's how a lot of them connected.
Why was that a story you wanted to tell? Why was that something you were interested in telling this story?
Well, I always knew about it. Yeah. And Martin Short asked me if I wanted to get involved and try to help them figure out how to set it up and get it funded. And as a comedy nerd, that's one of the origin stories. And so I was interested in that. And I'm also interested in what happens to people the rest of their lives. So when I make documentaries, I'm interested in the story of their career, but I'm more interested in how did they do? What did they learn in their life? What was the ride like?
Funny People is that, right? Because it's about, the movie could have ended with him not dying and getting a new lease on life. And then you made the last act of the movie well, now what? You have to continue living.
Yes.
I could talk about the movie forever. I know.
And it ends with Adam Sandler's character writing a joke for Seth, which is the one thing you never see him do because he's completely selfish. So the idea that he took a moment and wrote a bunch of jokes for a young comic was the ultimate way to apologize and to try to be a giving person. Like you could never imagine Rodney Dangerfield giving a young comic a joke.
There's like a selflessness there. There's a, Did you, you talk about getting a little emotional towards the end of the book, even just writing the end of the book. Why were you feeling that way?
I think it's a wild thing to spend a year or two going through all your stuff and looking at your journey, and you just think about how many things you've been through with all of these different people, and on one level you appreciate it and are blown away that you were even there. Like it's weird I was even there when they were singing Afternoon Delight on the Anchorman set.
Thinking of you's working up my appetite. Looking forward to a little afternoon delight. Rubbing sticks and stones together, making sparks ignite. And the thought of loving you is getting so exciting. Sky rockets in flight. Woo! Afternoon delight. Whoop.
You guys have it, I think.
Afternoon delight.
You work with a lot of Canadians.
Yeah.
Jim Carrey in the early days, Norm Macdonald, who you're working on a documentary about, which I'm really excited about, who's my fave. Martin Short, you mentioned. Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg. I mean, I could keep going. Do you have any perspective on what makes Canadian comedians so special? Have you noticed anything?
Yeah, I mean, there's clearly some sort of perspective of observing how weird America is on some level. I mean, when I met Seth and Evan, they did have a different take on everything, and I think they see the absurdity of something that in the United States we don't notice as much up close. Like, if I'm in London over the summer and I'm watching the events of what's happening with Donald Trump and our country, it just seems completely insane. And so you must develop a different type of sense of humor, watching the madness.
Yeah. And they say that about Elton John, hey, like that the reason he was such a great songwriter is because he wrote about like his version of America, like which was like a really beautiful version of America.
Yeah.
He would write Mona Lisas and Mad Hatters about like, well, like that song is actually about how bad New York is versus what he thought it was going to be. But like, all these songs are supposed to be about how beautiful America is. But an American could never write it because he's seeing it from like TV shows and movies.
Yeah, there's something about like at Second City TV, they would always do these sketches about all the Las Vegas types of entertainers, but they must have just found it ridiculous, and that's why they created Bobby Bittman and all those people, because they just had a different perspective. Comedy
has changed so much since these early days you were talking about. I mean, the early days of sketch shows on television, and then the sitcom world and the network world seems less and less important than ever. And now you have Colbert's. I mean, Colbert's show, in addition to being, what can I say here? Like very controversial, maybe the decision to put him off the air. But like there's a lot of articles that are also saying that, hey, like late night is also just as a form is not what it used to be. Like these institutions of comedy are starting to go away. Like these things that were once like pillars of comedy during your time. Where do you see the next sort of revolution in comedy? How do you feel about all these changes happening in comedy as someone who's been a student of it for so long?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like obviously there should be great comedy happening right now. I mean, the world is so insane. You would think that, the idea of making fun of it would be a real opportunity. We see it with South Park, right? Because, they're on fire as always, and they can
like more than ever
really get to the heart of it. Yeah. But it is surprising that there's not 10 other things like that, and I hope that there will be. There is something about the internet and podcasting that allows people to not go to the next step of creativity. So, some of the things that we loved about Conan, all the sketches and the comedy set pieces. You don't see a lot of that happening on the internet, on YouTube shows where people are reinventing the comic form because they have so much freedom they can put anything on. So I'm hopeful that somebody will push it to a place it's never been before.
Like real show, as opposed to just kind of chatting, and being funny. Yeah, show the true imagination.
Yeah, it's easy for comedians to just bullshit with each other, and they're all kind of funny doing it, but you don't see much writing.
Yeah.
And so I hope that there's some, whatever, like what Bob and Dave did with Mr. Show, that there are people who want to go, there's a way to reinvent all of this.
Tim Robinson may be the closest to that. I love that.
Yeah, no, he's amazing.
Writing this book and looking back on your career, what are you most proud of?
Not to get too mushy about it, every once in a while you walk up to somebody and, they tell you, hey, during COVID, I watched that movie 20 times. And you realize, we do these things and we're under so much stress and we're trying to make each other laugh and we hope they're not a bomb and it doesn't ruin our careers. And, and you forget, like, ultimately, there's just some person in their house having a hard day and they'll just put Step Brothers on or 40-Year-Old Virgin and it, like, kind of just makes the day a little better. And I try to think about that. Every once in a while you meet someone and you could tell, like, oh, they mean it. They're not joking. They did watch it 20 times to get over something. And I have those. I remember I watched Schitt's Creek during COVID, and I hadn't seen any of it. And Leslie and I watched it. And it was like medicine. It made us so happy. It just changed our entire mood, for half a year. So I'm happy to be included in that in any way.
When we were getting ready to have our baby, and I was happy and stressed out, because I knew that a baby was coming, and you know that feeling that happens when you just go, like, I can't do this. I'm a child. Like, I can't do this. Like, what am I can't possibly ever do this. I watched Knocked Up. And I just to kind of be like, oh yeah, okay, maybe I can do this.
Yeah, if Seth can do it, it can be done. He finally got the baby book.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. That's great.
And it's nice to get a chance to talk to you about all this stuff, and congrats on the book.
I appreciate it. Thank you.